Welcome back to the Talk Healing to Me podcast. I am your host, Karen Dwyer, and today's episode is a special one because my guest is not just an extraordinary woman in public life, but also one of my dearest friends. Kathleen O'Meara has worn many hats. Labour Party senator, political journalist, community activist, charity leader, advocate for cancer patients, and a powerful voice for social justice in Ireland. She's led campaigns that have made real change, fought for local healthcare, stood up for families, and navigated the complex world of policy, media, and advocacy with intelligence and grit. But beyond the headlines and the titles, she's a woman who's lived through life's curveballs, raising children while in public life, going through a relationship breakdown, building a new life and marriage with the gorgeous column, and continuing to reinvent yourself while holding on to what matters the most. And here's the twist. When we first met, we didn't really like each other. In fact, our friendship started with an argument. But somewhere between that rocky start and today, we became accountability partners, holding each other to our highest possibilities with a 10-minute call every single weekday morning. We clear the slate, we create a vision for the day, and we call each other out with love. So today, I want to dive into Kathleen's story, the woman behind the titles, the moments that have shaped her, that cause, that drive. The causes that drive her, and what friendship, healing, and change look like in real life. Kathleen O'Meara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you for such a fabulous introduction and opening.
Oh, it's still not
So
enough.
wonderful.
Yeah, it still doesn't capture you. When I was writing the intro, I was trying to figure out how many years we've been having the call. Is
Yeah.
it 4 or 5 now?
It probably is.
Yeah.
Probably is. And I
Every
wouldn't be
weekday
without
morning.
them. I wouldn't be without them. Talk about a powerful
Absolutely.
way to set up your day. It's just fabulous.
It really is.
It
It
really
really is. I want to go all the way back, right? I want you to take us back, like before the Shannon, before, and for anybody that's outside of Ireland, and there's a lot of you listening in the States. Thank you for listening, by the way, everyone, no matter where in the world you are. We're going to talk a little bit about Irish politics, of which Kathleen is, I mean, a shining light and has had a varied relationship with it. But the Shannon, we'll talk a little bit about that and what it actually means in a second. And before charity leadership, who was Kathleen O'Meara growing up? And what first pulled you towards that life?
This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your doctor. Views shared are personal and not a substitute for professional guidance.
Yeah, interesting. I had a very quiet upbringing, really, although probably not quiet at home because I'm one of 7 siblings and one of 6 sisters. And within that, I'm one of triplets. So I'm one of 3 girls. So my very clear recollection of growing up was how noisy we all were, especially as teenagers. My father, God help him, we used to despair. And he'd say, you were fine until you went into those nuns. So that was like the convent in Roscrea. We went to secondary school to Sacred Heart Convent in Roscrea. We all come from a farm. I grew up on a farm out the country, which was fabulous and has given me, a real desire and passion for growing, which I'm now finally getting around to doing in a garden, vegetable growing. But so we grew up, in the country, and I would say that the nuns, those same nuns that I just referred to, were probably very instrumental in my future careers. Didn't see it then, but looking back, I could see it because the Sacred Heart Order were very committed to the empowerment of women. And this was 70s. Yes, feminism, we were hearing mentions of it from across the water. But, feminism wasn't a big thing in Ireland. And they would not have called themselves feminists, but they had a long-standing commitment to the empowerment of women. As a result of that, myself, indeed, and my identical sister, we were on the debating team for the school. And that was my first taste of, I suppose, stepping up in front of a room and making the case for something. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I would write the piece and then I'd learn off the piece and then I would deliver the piece. In fact, I was so good at it that one judge said he wasn't sure whether I actually had memorized it or I had the ability to just speak it. So I love that. And it definitely gave me a taste for, and I suppose a sense that in my future life, I would do that. And journalism was what I was what I set my sights on. And both Aileen, my sister, and myself, the identical pair, went to college, went to university, which was quite unusual for women. That was just like the first of, I suppose, the entry of women in bigger numbers into third level education in Ireland. And I came, as I say, from an agricultural background, and not many of us went to university. And usually those who did went on to teach. But we had no intention of teaching. We saw teaching, I certainly did, and I think Aileen did too, saw teaching as like a boring life, basically. That it would be, you'd get fixed into a career and you'd stay in that career. That didn't happen to me. And so I suppose looking back at it now, what I could see is that I suppose, I was never destined for, a single and lifelong career. I've had a number of careers, and the first one was in journalism.
Yeah.
But back in the 80s, when I left college, and I actually studied journalism for a year, I got into the first year of the postgraduate course in DCU, as it is now, Dublin City University, and I was in the first year of that course. But in the 80s in Ireland, we were an economic basket case. It was a disaster. There just wasn't a job to be got anywhere. And then disaster, not quite disaster, but to some people it was a disaster. I, to use the old-fashioned term, fell pregnant, as if it fell pregnant as if it was something that you kind of tripped over and happened.
Yeah.
And my son was born in 1984, and I remember going for an interview. I'll just tell you a little story. So I went for an interview in RTE. So RTE was a national broadcaster, and to get a job in RTE was like the it.
Big
That was
deal.
to get a big deal, but also you'd be set up for life. You'd be set up for life in the national broadcaster. And it was also what we call here a semi-state organization, which means that you were effectively very secure in the role, because it was a state-backed organization.
Mhm.
So the day that I had the interview for for a job in RTE, I was 9 months pregnant. It was 24th of March, 1984, and I was 9 months pregnant. I was due that day, and let me tell you, I wasn't small. So I was pretty big. Off I went to the interview anyway, and it was like, one of those things. I didn't care because I thought they're not going to give me a job. And but the extraordinary thing is they did call me back. I was shortlisted. I didn't get the job. Then I was devastated. I didn't get the job, because then I thought, oh, I could definitely get the job. So after I had the baby, and like 3 weeks later, I was back shortlisting for the role. But that was it. Yeah, 24th of March, 1984, I did the job interview.
I can picture you marching in there. Do you know
Yeah.
that? I love it.
Yeah. And of course, it's the best way to do an interview for something is to not be attached.
Mhm.
It's just kind of just go in and be yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then as a result of that, I then ended up in a political role, actually, in working
How
for the Labour Party. Yes, in Leinster House. Sorry, you go ahead.
what I wanted to say was you starting as a political journalist before stepping into politics yourself. How did it go from reporting, or what was it like going from reporting the story to being the story?
Yeah, that was a big move. Like I didn't get to be a journalist until later in the 80s. There were very few jobs. There was one I didn't get. So I took the next job that came up, which was working for the Labour Party in Leinster House. Now I was a political junkie from an early years. So to me, this was like playing in the sandpit. I was going to go and work in Leinster House, have access to Leinster House. Is the national parliament, the seat of the national parliament, and they were going to pay me to do this. Extraordinary. So I did that for a few years. I absolutely loved it. But what it gave me then was, it gave me a very solid foundation to be a political journalist. So then I did eventually get a job in RTE, and I worked there for a number of years into the 90s, and I loved it. But I had there was like an itch that I couldn't scratch, which was the pull back to politics.
Mm.
Because as a journalist, you're observing. You're on the sidelines, you're up in the stands, you're watching the action
Mhm.
on the pitch. And that's great. It's really interesting. But there was something about actually being on the pitch. And I got a call in 1990. My daughter was born in 94. And not long after that, I got a call from a Labour Party minister, a woman, who needed somebody to come in as an advisor. So I went in to work with her in government buildings because the Labour Party had gone into government. I thought, oh my God, this is an opportunity I can't pass up. I was working in RTE at the time, and the head of HR woman said to me, "Oh, just take leave and you can come back." I said, "No, if I'm going, I'm not coming back." And which was quite a statement now when I think back at it. But also off I toddled to this job in government buildings, and that was amazing. That was phenomenal because I was at the cutting edge of legislation. I was seeing how policy was developed, and I was hooked. I was hooked. I decided that at that stage I would be a politician. And I thought that I would be a politician in Dublin. We were living in Dublin. I was married and now had 2 children. So I saw myself becoming a local politician in Dublin and climbing the ranks, so to speak. But then a vacancy arose here in North Tipperary, where I have strong family connections. And I thought, there's an opportunity. And I said to my husband, let's do that. Let's go down and I'll run for election. And he
Yeah.
said, okay, let's do that. Now, when I think back on it now, I think I was mad. But, and I, so there was a youthful exuberance, shall we say, but always, like, I think when I think back in my life, when I see an opportunity like that, I think, wow, when will this ever come again? So I entered politics. I moved lock, stock and barrel. We moved down to Nina, North Tipperary, in this house, to this house where I'm now speaking to you from. And I got stuck into local politics.
Wow.
Yeah, for 10
What
years.
was that moment, or was there a moment where you thought, this is exactly why I'm here and I've arrived?
During the 10 years.
Yeah.
This episode of Talk Healing to Me is sponsored by Clean Boss, created by Joy Mangano, the legendary inventor behind the Miracle Mop and a pioneer in clean innovation. Clean Boss is a botanical disinfectant that kills 99.9% of viruses, germs, and bacteria. It's safe for food surfaces, soft surfaces, and baby high chairs with no toxic ingredients and no rinse required. It's also a degreaser, odor eliminator, and all-purpose cleaner that works as hard as the chemical-heavy stuff without the health risks. Check it out at getcleanboss.com/Karen for a clean, better, and living safer life.
Funny, yeah, there was. And it wasn't to do with elections. It was to do with a campaign. It was to do with an issue. So early on, I think about a year or so after I entered politics in North Tipperary, I got elected to the Seanad. You've referred to it as the Seanad, or the Senate, which is the upper house. I ran for the lower house. I didn't succeed, but I got nominated for and took a seat in the upper house, which is a far more civilized place and a great place to be. So as a senator, I had my office and I had standing, and I was full-time politician. And an issue came up. A group came in from the community in Silvermines. So Silvermines is a tiny little village about 13 kilometres from Nina, the town. And it has a long history, centuries back, of mining. So there was a mining company came to excavate and exploit the area in the 70s and 80s. And they left behind quite a seriously bad environmental legacy, part of which was a tailings pond. So a tailings pond is kind of a man-made created. It's not a pond, actually. It's more like a heap, almost flat on top, in which they poured the excavated soil, which, because they had used things like dynamite and mercury and so on, was highly polluted. And what happened was, it was a big area, 46 acres in size. It had dried out and dust was blowing from it. So they came in to me to ask me for my help on this. And that moment, I said, I'll get this done. And so I got on, I did all the things. And basically what I did instinctively, and only afterwards did I realize that instinctively what I am is a campaigner. So instinctively, with my media experience and my political experience, early on in political experience, but I could see straight away what I needed to do. So I created my own media campaign and a political campaign around it. It took a few years, but I persuaded the minister responsible for it to basically take it on as a state project and to rehabilitate not only that site, but a whole number of other sites, polluted sites, which hadn't been identified, So it's all done now, shall we say. It's a long time ago. It's
You were the
20
Irish
years.
Erin Brockovich.
Yes, the Irish Erin Brockovich. Now,
That's
you look
incredible.
more like her than I ever did. But
Listen, I wouldn't mind looking like her, but listen, you're the one doing the action. That's phenomenal. I didn't know that.
yeah, that was my biggest. And we go walking up the hills in Silvermines, and I look down and say, "There's my legacy.
Wow.
There's my
But I
legacy."
knew about the hospital, the Nina Hospital
Yes,
campaign.
yeah,
And that's the one that kind of stood out to me. I suppose maybe that stood out to me because of my health experience, but I
yes,
really saw that fight for people and politics and
yeah,
persistence and all of those things.
yes.
But I never knew that. That's
Interesting
amazing.
about the Nina Hospital campaign. Yeah. And that was another big campaign that I was involved in. And a lot of other people were involved in that campaign. But the Silvermines campaign, I was the only politician who took it on
Mm.
because people in my own party said, there's no votes in it. And I said, you know what? It needs to be done. So I'm going to do it. And they turned out to be right from the point of view that I didn't actually get elected to the Dáil in the end, but the issue got sorted.
Yeah.
And so like that, it isn't and wasn't as high profile as the hospital campaign. And of course, what time has shown is that we were right about the hospital, but that doesn't matter now really. But the Silvermines piece got done, the polluted sites got rehabilitated, and the community, got what they needed.
But that's a real demonstration of who you are, Kathleen, that it wasn't about the ego or it wasn't about what you get out of it. It was about
Yeah,
what you believe in and what has integrity. That has to be
exactly.
done, and using your voice to do that. Well done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean you're right. That was the moment, I think, where I said, I know why I'm here.
Mm,
I'm here to do this. No one else will do it.
I love that. I
Mm.
love that. That's brilliant. I know you being the Labour spokesperson on childcare
Mm.
and Labour Party whip. How did you navigate the push for family focused policy in a political environment that always, I suppose, well, they weren't prioritising it?
No, they weren't. And our policy was very strongly that childcare, early years education is as important as all other education system. And so there needs to be, I mean, it's the case all over Europe. You've got a state funded and state run early education um, system. We don't. We don't. What we have is kind of tacked on a piece here and a piece there. And that's a lot of the time what it feels like for parents is that, the whole system is teetering. So we're kind of giving subsidies in order to make sure that the workers are paid. Whereas in fact, if we had a state system, it would work far better, but it's probably too late to do that now. It's probably too late to dismantle the system, but it's a system arose from our economic model as a country, and we won't be changing that economic model anytime soon. So I was in the Shannon in the upper house during the boom years, the Celtic Tiger years, which I was thinking about them the other day because there's a podcast on at the moment revisiting those years, and I was listening to it, and I was remembering that time, and I remembered there was one or two pieces I remember. One was there was a hairdresser, the people that you think about. So it was a hairdresser on Bagot Street, quite close to Leinster House. I used to go to get my hair done, when the house was sitting. She was a genius with her brush. And she told me how she and her husband, a taxi driver, were buying their third holiday apartment down in Wexford. So I said, wow. So they were getting loans on the equity of their existing property. And I thought that's a recipe for disaster. I think it's called a pyramid and it will collapse. And sure enough, it did. And I often thought about her, whatever happened to her. And the other people I remember were the single mothers, young women who came in to me to talk to me about housing and who then got these crazy loans from Blue Sky Mortgages and people like that and got all this money and were absolutely thrilled with themselves because they'd got a mortgage like everybody else. And I thought, this is not going to end well. And
Mhm.
sure enough, they were the first to be hit when it all imploded
I
back
was
in,
one of them.
yeah, in
I bought
2008.
I bought a 2-bedroom apartment off the plans that was one of the darkest, like there was no sunlight that came in at all, for €245,000. I ended up selling it for 180. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a whole other ball game, but my goodness.
Yes.
I mean, but there's something in Ireland, we're kind of obsessed with owning property.
We
I mean,
are.
I'm still renting, but there, when you look at, other countries like Denmark or Sweden or any of them, most people rent. It's not about owning
Yes.
property. And I wonder, going all the way back to our own history, is it about ownership, and is it about,
Security, and I
Mhm.
think it probably is. I think there is something in the DNA. But
Yeah.
I also think, most of us have come from, as I did, an agricultural background, where you had your house and you had your land around the house and you had your little garden and so on. And I think that's still in the DNA. We never went through an industrial revolution like
Mhm.
like UK or other European countries. We never, it's like we jumped over that phase. And
Mhm.
that's when cities were built. So we have no city or kind of urban, we've no sense of urban development or urban architecture even, or urban style. You look at our towns, like they're just kind of like stuck together. There's very few that have really looked at themselves and developed the town. I mean, Westport is a very good example of a town that really works very well. Burr is a lovely town, but that has a military background. So we don't have that kind of urban sense in Ireland.
Or
So it's
even
like
the
we're
infrastructure for that
our
matter.
infrastructure for that. So it is historical and social and culture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, look, I love that you have such a deep sense and knowing about so many different aspects of Ireland and politics, but also people as well. And you took another pivot then into communications and later became head of advocacy and
That's
communications
right.
for the Irish Cancer
Yeah.
Society. So you were in communication, then
Yeah.
politics, and then going into the one of the charities who I'm
Yes.
sure, were
Yeah.
campaigning. What drew you into that space?
I know. Well, in 2007, I left politics, after 10 years, and that my third election. Because before that, I could think around 2005 or thereabouts, I had said to myself, okay, I'm going to give it one more go. And if it doesn't work this time, I'm out of there. I'll give it everything. And I did give it everything. I gave it 100%. And it was tough because it meant I wasn't at home and I wasn't minding my marriage, you know. And I'm not saying like, minding my marriage would have made a huge difference. There are other reasons why my marriage ended. But in 2007, I exited politics and I had a year or so to decide um, how I would, because I got an exit payment, which gave me a bit of a buffer. So I had time to decide what I wanted to do next. And I had a conversation with someone that I had come across here in Nina. And we basically sat down and I said to him, you ask me the questions now, but the key question I want you to ask me is, what gets you up in the morning? Like, what is the thing that really gave me energy when I was in politics? Because there were a lot of things that didn't give me energy, let me tell you. But, because it can be a very macho male environment, and difficult to negotiate as a woman. But the thing that really really kind of gave me heart and lit me up and gave me drive were my campaigns, the Silver Mines campaign and the hospital campaign. So I said, you know what? I'm a campaigner. And it was like almost like when I got clarity on that, the things start to open up. And I got an offer. I was headhunted for a new role in the Irish Cancer Society as head of advocacy and communications. And when I saw the job spec, I thought they wrote that with me in mind.
Oh,
I know, because it had the combination of the political experience and the journalism and the campaigning. So, and the timing was perfect because my marriage was breaking up at that point, and I needed a job and I needed security, and it felt like a port in the storm. And the extraordinary thing was, I took up that job 1 week exactly before the bank collapse, before the Lehman's bank collapse in the States, and following which our own banks collapsed as well, and all that unraveled. And I thought, thank you, God, I'm in, like I am where I need to be. Now, the only difficulty was the job was in Dublin and my home is here in Nina. So I had to take care of that and get my daughter through school. My son had graduated at that point, get my daughter through school. So I was able to do all that and be independent and also be in a job which to me really made a contribution. Because I was able to passionately take on things like the tobacco companies, breast check, the screening program, the extension of the screening program, and lots of other things. Sure, I love it again, and I was made for it. And I shaped it. I gave it shape. I brought social justice to it in a way that hadn't been done before by highlighting the difference in cancer deaths between a middle class community and a poor community, for example. That kind of thing. Put those issues on the agenda. Yeah, so I stayed there for 8 years, and I definitely made a contribution, and I really, really loved it. But
well,
I got bored with it. Actually, I wanted to. I wanted to look at the bigger picture of power, where power really lies. And I wanted to look at an organization and be in an organization which had a much closer relationship to the state, as in, is funded by the state to deliver services, which the Cancer Society isn't. So I got another call. It's extraordinary that when you get clear on something, it will manifest. It will turn up.
Yeah.
That's what I've always found. Once you get clear on what your direction is, it's like the road will open up ahead of you. So I got a call about a job in the rehab group, which is a very large disability services organization, and more like a big company really than a charity. As big as a very big employer, like thousands of employees. So I went to work there for a number of years, and it was very instructive, and it also allowed me to build my network within the charity sector with a view to becoming a consultant in the charity sector, and to really kind of clarify my thinking on what it is that I could contribute.
Yeah.
And also I wanted to no longer be driving up and down to Dublin from here, because I was living in Dublin during the week and here at home at weekends, because my
Yeah.
daughter was at school and then she was in college, and she'd come at the weekends and I'd be here at the weekends as well.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to no longer do that. So in 2020, January 2020, I handed in my notice, which was due to expire in March 2020. And we know what happened in March 2020. But I went ahead anyway and set up my own consultancy, and I've worked from home here. And, one of the great, I suppose, results of the pandemic has been the working from home and the Zoom, the use of Zoom and Teams and so on, and the whole online working. It has made a massive difference to me, and it allowed me to really develop my business and develop my company and be successful around that. And I've loved it. I've loved every bit of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you've impacted so many. I love that the myriad of experience. I would love to know, what is the difference between influencing change inside the political system versus advocating from outside of it?
When you're advocating from outside of it, you can be really clear and focused
Mm.
on your aim, and you go in there into the political system, which I have done lots of in the last number of years, and you take your case there to the specific people and the influencers, shall we say, which can be government backbenchers, opposition. They all have a role, right up to the minister and so on, and civil servants. When you're in the system, whether you're in government or opposition, in many ways you're a bit of a cog in the wheel. There's only so much you can do, but there's so much coming at you.
Yeah.
Because I would say that to my clients, be a pest, because politicians have got so much coming at them and so many things on their plate, that you're going to have to keep reminding them that you exist and what you want. You're just one of many things that they're doing. But when you can actually be more impactful from the outside in than from the inside. That's what I found, having
Isn't
done
that
both.
fascinating?
It is fascinating.
Wow.
You can be more impactful, and you can be freer to speak. You're freer to speak
Yeah.
as an advocate.
Yeah, I think one of the things that fascinates me about all of that, it's like the campaigning and the working in environments where strategy meets emotion, particularly, and obviously, with MS to Success, balancing the science and then the emotions of people and people's lives, like you mentioned as well. But especially in health advocacy, how do you balance facts and emotions and urgency to get people to listen?
And that's one of the things that I teach people to do.
And that's where we're going to press pause for today, because our chat with Kathleen was just too good to fit into one episode. Part 2 of this conversation will be out next Monday, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. We dive even deeper into the big life lessons, the laughs and the moments that have shaped who Kathleen is today. So make sure you've subscribed to the Talk Healing to Me podcast. It will be waiting for you first thing next week. Thank you to our sponsors of this episode. You can visit getcleanboss.com/Karen. And also a thank you to our video and podcast producer and editor, Aoife McNamara at Imagine Media. Thank you.